Folks, thanks so much for tuning in at the start of the week. And as you will see, those of you who watched and listened to the Saturday podcast where I try and give you a sneak peek at the week ahead, you will see that a number of these things are unfolding. Now, we usually start by doing a quick update on what's going on in Iran. And as we know, the stalemate continues with the Iranian Islamist dictators that continue to kill Iranian citizens. They're holding off. They are counting on the media, mainstream media, whether it's BBC or CBC or CNN, the New York Times. They are counting on the free world media to continue to make their case, to make the case for the Iranian dictators against the United States. And they know that people in democracies don't like war, and they get tired if the wars last too long. So with the help, and the only help they're really getting and benefiting from is from the media, the Iranians are holding on. And we'll see if President Trump, what he is going to do, because his approval ratings are going down as people are influenced by mainstream media. People forget that the key here is that Iran should never have a nuclear weapon, because if they do get it, they will use it. They are a theological group. They are not driven by normal thinking or rational thinking. And the greatest thing that an Iranian dictator could do from this Iranian regime is to be the one who unleashes nuclear hell on the world. And the rest of the world seems to have forgotten that, other than the United States. Well, let's watch as that stalemate continues. But as we predicted right here, and those of you who watch and listen regularly, you'll know that we were talking about keep an eye on Russia, keep an eye on Putin falling out of favor at home. We saw over the weekend, and remember on the last Thursday and Friday, I said, watch on Saturday. Let's see what that parade looks like in Moscow. This is their so-called Victory Day parade, where they celebrate and have for decades now the defeat of the pushing back of the Nazis, and with good reason they should celebrate that. And yet, as we predicted, it was a smaller parade. They were worried about being attacked by Ukrainian drones. Much of their weaponry was not on display, and Putin himself looked terrible. There's speculation that he's taking all kinds of pharmaceuticals just to try and look healthy. He looked weak. Folks, continue to watch that. That is my prediction here. It's unfolding as we thought. And thanks for some of the feedback I've been getting from you and some of the intel that's coming in from sources I've dealt with around the world over the years. Well, the other thing that's defying, again, mainstream media, remember, is culturally Marxist. Mainstream media, this is the leaders in mainstream media, and I'm not talking about all the journalists. All the journalists are affected, and they are afraid to stand up to those who are demanding what type of editorial line should be reflected in their reporting. We continue to see, and it's a great surprise, in a time when the world should be spiraling down, or the economies of the world should all be spiraling down, and we're all plunged into depression, the various stock markets continue to do extremely well. We've talked in the last couple of weeks. I've explained to some of you about what we mean by these stock market measurements. So the S&P 500, remember, this is Standard & Poor's. S&P and the 500 are an aggregate of about 500 companies that they monitor to see how those companies are doing, continues to do extremely well. Matter of fact, since March, the S&P 500 overall average is up 16%. And this isn't just what's happening on North American markets, but we see in South Korea, where originally when the Iran war started and the price of oil was going up so terribly fast and high, we saw a drop in the SK and the South Korean market. And now we see an increase. The drop in the South Korean market had been around 20% since the start of the Iranian crisis. Now bouncing back and rebounding. They're sort of dealing with the realities of the oil shock. Samsung and other huge companies are benefiting from what we're seeing on AI and the sale and development of chips. This continues to defy the the leaders in media. Now remember, mainstream media is culturally Marxist, meaning they are socialists. They hate certain notions like merit, the fact people can get ahead if they have opportunity. They hate the fact that people who invent things, people who are innovative, can sell products which can turn into large companies which hire millions of people and even finance the pension plans of the entire world. Mainstream media hates that. They want control of the minds of people to suggest that Marxism, and that is that there's no God, that there's no sense in having any definition of family, that there's no real need for private property, that a few really smart people should tell everybody else how to work, that they should cancel people who are opposed to culturally Marxist thinking. That thinking that comes from mainstream media is having to report that the economies, there's challenges, of course, and prices are going up in a number of areas. The economies themselves are doing better than thought. And so let's continue to watch that. Even things like keep an eye on the beef market, because the price of groceries going up, no question about it. When supply chains are interrupted, things cost more. And what's been amazing is with several years of drought, now this is reported in the US and in Canada, after several years of drought, we've seen farmers reducing the size of their herds, the size of their livestock, and that's in spite of incentive that's put out there by the main livestock production companies. And there's about 4 in the US that are very large, and there's 2 or 3 that are very large in Canada, Cargill being one of them. And so in spite of the fact that costs go up, the purchasing, actually people are purchasing even more beef. This has been recorded over the last few months, and people are saying, well, how can this be? Another thing that mainstream media doesn't like to report is that protein is having a moment, and actually the moment is turning into an hour, and an hour is turning into weeks and months. People who are by the millions who were caught up by the mainstream media dialogue, false dialogue or monologue over several years, saying that meat is going to kill you and meat is killing the planet, and cow gas and cow farts are actually causing climate change. As that becomes continually disproved, and as farming methods have improved, even including the production of hay and the production of feed, though the costs have gone up, more people are realizing that they need protein, and that meat is one of the best, safest, and cleanest forms of protein. And it's Gen Z and millennials that are coming back online, buying up the protein and the meat that is causing this to happen. It's going to take, estimates are anywhere from 2 years to maybe 3 to 4 years for the herds to be, the livestock herds to be fully replenished, and the stock to be replenished, and the costs to be coming down. But mark my words, you are going to see left-leaning governments, left-leaning politicians saying, we are going to help you with the cost of groceries and the cost of food and the cost of feed. Let us take it over. Let government take it over, and everything's going to be wonderful. And this is where you get the lies that come from people like Mayor Mamdani and others around the country, and even in Canada, that if the government could just control grocery stores, and if the government could just control food, everything would be better. Every government in the world that has tried that, and I've been to many of those countries, mostly in communist and heavily socialistic countries, the result is less food available, less choice available, higher prices, bread lines, grocery lines. No system is perfect, but a system that allows freedom of choice, freedom of markets, freedom of production is going to produce better food, safer food, in the long run, less expensive food. Do not listen to mainstream media and to the political parties and politicians who tell you they're going to fix it by controlling it. They will destroy the food supply if they are allowed to. Now, we're seeing a similar situation. I've talked about markets in the United States, talked about markets in Canada and South Korea. Latin America, why are markets generally doing better? Why is the economy doing better? That's because one after another, the severely left-wing socialist Marxist governments are falling out of favor, and more conservative or right-leaning economic governments are being elected, and that is resulting in better production. That is resulting in freedom of choice in the markets. That results in a better economy, more jobs, and more competitive prices. And mainstream media, again, hates this. They despise it. That's why you see left-leaning governments trying to control other media outlets, trying to control those media reporting, be it any form of online, whatever it might be. They will try to control that. Don't let them. And look how the narrative is changing, for instance, in cities like Los Angeles, which have continually and very in a heartbroken way have supported socialist mayors, left-leaning liberal mayors. It's destroyed the economy of LA. The streets, like so many other cities, are filled with homeless people, people suffering, people by the thousands on the street being taken advantage of by the predators who deal the drugs and who force the people on the street to do all kinds of outrageous and unfortunate things. There's a guy named Spencer Pratt. Those of you who watch reality TV on the show The Hills, he's actually got a shot at becoming mayor of LA. Now, this is mind-blowing to people, but he's talking about dealing with crime. He's talking about dealing with ways to stop the predators who push the free drug clinics and the so-called safe sites that only lead to more drug addictions. He's bringing forward an alternative to that, and he's doing pretty well. I don't know if he's going to win, but this is happening. Also, this, I call it the move back to reality. He's from a reality TV show, but generally speaking, a move back to reality is gripping politics. I want to talk a little more about that right now. In Canada right now, and certainly in British Columbia, where there is a race on for the new leader of the provincial Conservative Party, that's the British Columbia Conservative Party, all of the candidates who are running, all of them are pushing back on this notions that First Nations or Indigenous should control all the land and own all the land. They are saying that, I don't know what country you're listening in right now, but this thing about land acknowledgements, where the politician or the official will start every speech by saying they want to acknowledge that the land really doesn't belong to anybody else except the First Nations people. There's considerable pushback against that. People want fairness, people want freedom, but the notion that all the land has been stolen somehow is getting a fair bit of pushback. And it results, you have things happening like in British Columbia right now. It's just been announced by the provincial government that an outdoors, very beautiful natural area called Joffrey Lakes is going to be closed at two different significant portions through the summers, closed, but only open to First Nations groups. So based on the color of your skin, you will be allowed to go to Joffrey Lakes all summer long. And it's the provincial government says it's being closed so that certain folks can connect with the environment. You are going to see backlash on this. You're going to see pushback. Unfortunately, these leftist approaches move away from people cooperating together and create increased friction. Very interesting, there's a student, university student who's getting a lot of attention. This student, his name is George Ramsey. You might want to check him out. He was an award-winning essay student, quite remarkable and doing extremely well and being very well thought of and spoken of. He's just written a piece called The Tyranny of Land Acknowledgements. The Tyranny of Land Acknowledgements. You can pick the side of the issue you like on this. The fact is, the side of what some people are calling common sense is bouncing back. And these themes are really coming out strongly in the province of British Columbia. Also in the province of Quebec, we see the provincial conservative leader there, Éric Duhem, who used to work for me, was a great guy. I enjoyed working with him very much. He is speculating, and media is speculating, that actually the Quebec Conservative Party could experience a rebound in upcoming elections there. Let's keep an eye on that. Why? Because people are basically not afraid to say, you know what, maybe some of the common sense approach that conservatives are talking about actually does make sense. So let's see if that continues in the province of Quebec. And we're seeing The discussion, there's been the so-called a culture war. Part of the culture wars has been called the war on mommies or the war on motherhood. And don't calm down now. Don't get all excited here thinking I'm going to be pushing one particular brand of maternal health or not. But women themselves are much more aggressively taking on the arguments that have for the last few decades suggested that motherhood is awful, that it destroys the freedom women can have, that it takes away from the joys of life. At least now, women are being allowed to discuss this without being shouted down by those on the left. People are having a good hearing, and more we're hearing about the joys of motherhood. Women who were previously on the left on this issue, writing about it, this being the happiest times of their lives, though there's no question about it, changing diapers and dealing with throw up and all of the things that come with little kids. No, there's no question. Those are irritations. But the thing that I see as positive is people are being allowed to have the discussion without being shouted at and shrieked at by extremists on either side, and governments are recognizing it. You're probably aware that government, for instance, a number of governments are offering bonuses and offering longer maternity care for women who are having children. In Europe, there's some countries, like for instance, the country of Hungary, offering rebates or reductions to families that want to purchase 7-seater vans so that they can, more comfortably accommodate more than 2.3 kids or whatever it is. And some recent research coming out saying that with seatbelt laws, which we all agree with, and having to have certain types of car seats for children, which would often limit, depending on your car, your back seat to maybe just 2 car seats or 3 car seats, has had an effect on people wanting to have more kids, and that is beginning to change. And here you have at least one government, possibly more, offering reduced prices for 7-seater vans. And then you have individuals, and I'm not saying I support everything they do, but like Malcolm and Simone Collins, this is a billionaire couple who have moved to, let's say, a more rural, agrarian type of riding and area, and are having, I think they're on their 6th kid they're talking about. Now, I don't endorse all their ways. I don't endorse all their methods, but it says there is a rise in saying, you know what, maybe kids aren't so bad, and maybe we should be replenishing the human race rather than watching it disappear as it is in terms of declining birth rates in so many countries. Folks, these are some of the issues of the day. I hope you'll jump in. Feel free to give me the comments. And as I like to zero in on what Gen Z is saying, the new lexicon, and even from millennials, if you want a word, if you are a Gen Z, you're looking for words for your friends, you've already heard this one. If you want to know what your kids or grandkids saying, here's another word. It's the word zang. So instead of something happening and you go, dang, I wish that hadn't happened, you say zang. That's another word for your lexicon. Zang, folks. It's been a great time talking with you. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.